That reminds me, I think it would be a fun story to learn about how you recruited Phil Mickelson and about your just overall ASU relationship. So many of your golfers are Sun Devils.
That's flattering. I mean, I have a very strong relationship with our hometown university, and I've been very active in it, not only as a coach, but as a board member with UAJ, I'm proud to say, the Sun Angel Foundation. But let's go back to Phil. When he was 15 years old, I was still coaching at the University of Arkansas, and I shook hands with him, and he looked at me and saw the Razorback on the front of my shirt and said, "Yeah, that's nice to meet you, Coach." And I knew then that it was probably not going to happen that he would come from San Diego to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Well, over the 3-year period that he was still graduating from high school, I went from Arkansas to Arizona State. And by now, I know Phil Mickelson quite well, and the recruiting war began. There was a bunch of universities, as you can imagine, after the number one player in the world. And I started thinking about hot buttons. And I tell this to all of my agents every day. If you don't shave every day, you look like a bum. That's exactly what I be in recruiting. And hot buttons are so critical. I found out that his girlfriend at the time through high school played on the boys' high school team with him because there were no girls' team. So I recruited her to ASU as well, and she happened to get a spot on the ASU women's team at the time. I recruited his mama more than anybody. I made sure that she knew I loved her spaghetti. And finally then I had to convince Phil that he could be a world-class player, but he could be the first guy to win a national championship team title at Arizona State. Fortunately, he believed in all those parts, and everybody else today are still together, so I think we served our purpose.
So Phil Mickelson joins you, Coach Steve Loy, at Arizona State. You very predictably win a national championship, having the number one amateur in the world join your program. It's already a strong program. We've already talked about your 40 All-Americans. So he turns pro. And do you mind sharing that story with us? Do you immediately, without question, follow him into the professional business, or what happened?
Well, you're bringing up ASU. So other than the national championship, which Linda's team on the women's side and the men's in 1990 is still a record today. We're the only ones to win men's and women's championships in the same year. My point was not that particular year, but the entire time we were there, because of the players, not the coach, we were never ranked out of the top 3 from the time that we came there. And when we left, we were the pinnacle program in America. So it was a very difficult time for me to leave at age 40, knowing that we were finally at the top of the game. But I knew from day one, being with Phil for the 4 years at college and winning a PGA Tour event in his sophomore year and seeing how he went about things, this was going to be a very special individual. And when he came to me after we interviewed all the agencies in June of that year was that he was turning pro, he and his family called me in for dinner one day and said, "Coach, we like this about this company and this about this company, but we want you to manage Phil's business." Of course, I was flattered, but I knew nothing seriously about being a sports agent. I just knew that I didn't like a lot of things about him. And I declined that. And that was June. And in the meantime, he had already planned a trip with his dad and myself just as a thank you for everything we'd ever done. Another great thing about big people, they always lift others up. So he took Phil Sr. and I to the Scottish and the British Open. And while we're there, of course, he had his new agent that I was very supportive of, Rocky Hambrick out of Dallas, had already orchestrated a plan to get Coach to join the team. That was July 11th when he finally said, "Coach, I don't care what it takes. You gotta be part of this." And I came home and resigned the ASU job with lots of difficult emotional time because I knew we had another national championship team coming up right behind him, which I did. I never look back to this day that I didn't make the right decision. It's been a wonderful journey. We've had many other great players come through the door as part of our team now, and I've just been very blessed because of the people we associate.
Is there anything you can share with us about the evolution of that business relationship that goes far beyond being an agent and an athlete?
Well, the one thing that I can proudly say about Phil is from the day that I came into the business, again, a real greenhorn. I knew nothing about where I was going to go with his business at the time, how I was going to orchestrate it, and more importantly, whether I really was cut out to be a sports agent, because I was always on the other side trying to protect my players as the coach. But the day that I took the job, he says, Coach, I don't want you to be my agent. I want you to be the next Mark McCormick in the industry. And I looked at him like, are you kidding me? Mark McCormick is like God. And I'm sitting down here trying to figure out how to get to first base. So I smiled and said, well, that's very flattering. He's always been a partner, and that's the key here. Many times an agent becomes an employee and is really as manipulative as he can be with a client. So is the client when they want something that the agent is not able to provide. So the partnership is very adverse. And in the case of Phil, and it's grown now exponentially with other relationships that we've had over time with other golfers and other associates that we've had, the partnership becomes the number one entity. And so I first was his coach, then I was his agent, then I became a partner. And, along the way, fortunately, he's always relied on me to be a mentor. I'll never use the word a second dad because he has the first and best one in the world. But over time, we found the right things. And the one proud thing I'll say is I never will make an investment with another player that I haven't already made first before I introduce something to them. So dollar for dollar, wherever one of my players have been made an investment, I put my dollar right next to that so that they know that I would do this whether you want to be involved or not. Well, with Phil and I, we've been very successful. We've also had a couple mishaps with a restaurant or a .com company that we invested in, but overall it's been a blessing because we know that we're not taking advantage of each other, and we know that we're fully vested with each other. He plays golf and brings the front door open, and I make sure that I got the back of the house covered, taking care of the businesses, and that's how we do it.